We're going to look at one point in the lesson, and then we'll go to Likutei Halachot, and we'll try to gain some insight on this lesson, on this point.
Everything's now it's official. Now it's official. Now we're talking.
A long time to see.
What they did, look there. What's going on? Wow.
Great. It might be Kedai. It's your call, because we have two people who haven't been here before. I don't know if it's.
But I catch up with him on Shabbat.
Oh yeah. Oh
Yeah.
yeah. You're learning lesson 16 on Shabbos.
We
Oh okay.
catch
So
up. He's already like,
you're learning it on Shabbos. Like you already like you're deep, much deeper into it. And we learn.
he gets a much more refined version. He gets a much refined version.
Okay. Great.
This is
Yeah,
the
I
psolet.
learned a lot of it now. Great.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay. So you're on your
so you're coming to one?
Anyways, let's yeah. Well, that's one thing at a time. One thing at a time.
I'm a salesman. I go right for the sale.
Yeah.
It's the most fun you can have in Yiddishkeit. I don't think you can have any more fun in Yiddishkeit.
Then,
Yeah.
Complete disruption.
okay, so
Okay.
Holy disruption.
just as a structure, we're going to learn a concept within the lesson, Samech, 60, in the Moharan. And then we're going to try to understand, expand upon it using the story of Purim. So in this lesson, Rabbi Nachman lays out something interesting. He says that in the world, people are asleep. People sleep, and the sleep is that they are not aware of the reality that they're living in, and that they're not aware that Hashem is running the show. So people who walk around in the world and see a mundane reality and don't really see how it has anything to do with God, Rabbi Nachman refers to that as people who are asleep. And there are different levels, he says, and ultimately there are 70 degrees, so to speak, of sleep that a person can experience. Each is one layer of disconnect from a facet of understanding that Hashem is running the world, also known as a face of the Torah. Each face of the Torah is a dimension that Hashem is in charge and Hashem is running my life. With each face being eliminated, a person goes into deeper sleep. And then they can reach a point where a person has fallen asleep from all 70 facets of Torah. Okay, so these are the degrees of sleep. What are the consequences? Excuse me. What are the consequences of these degrees of sleep? Is that a person, ultimately, we can't really wake up a person, Rabbi Nachman says. And I'll read you that line because it's a confusing point. It says, "V'tzarich le'orero mishnato." We have to wake the person up. Okay, we have to wake a person up. That means ourselves, others, everyone. We have to wake the person up. V'iyefshar le'orero, but we can't wake the person up. Ki im kshemitorer me'atzmo. Ki tzarich itaruta diltata. Okay, here Rabbi Nachman brings us a very known concept in Kabbalah and throughout all Chassidut, which is called Itarota Diltata. A person cannot wake someone up unless he wakes up himself. And this is what's referred to as Itarota Diltata, an awakening from below. So we have to understand what's the, I guess, what's minimum level of Itarota Diltata? What is the minimum? To be Yotze, what is called to wake up from below, what is the minimum? Right? That's first question we have that we have to define today. What does it mean to wake up from below? Like obviously if someone can get up and do everything himself, he's good to go. You don't need to help him, right? So he says, if you can't wake someone up unless he wakes up. Okay, but if he wakes up and he's good, then where does the help from above come? So what is the point, the minimum point where a person has to wake himself up? And if a person is asleep, it means there's absolutely nothing. There's no, how is he supposed to have an awakening from below? That's one point. Another point that we want to look at is that he says that the method by which we wake a person up is by hearing a story. That means when a person wakes up when we wake up from our sleep, what's happening is we become aware that there's something happening. We become aware that there's something that we weren't aware of that's happening. There's something going on. That's what Rabbi Nachman refers to as a story. So one of the challenges of learning the Likutei Moharan is that he uses very, very exact language, and we don't. So when we try to understand words, when we hear story, we don't necessarily think of a story that way. But that's how Rabbi Nachman is using the word story. Story is the most absolute sense of a story, in that I'm telling you something that is going on. The most original sense of the word story is I'm telling you about something that's happening right now. So if, it's, someone said a good example was the Truman Show, right? The Truman Show. Like, he doesn't, like the whole time he's part of a story, he doesn't realize he knew he was a story, right? So that idea is what Rabbi Nachman is telling us, that we're in a story and we may not even be aware of a story. If a person's asleep, he's not aware that there's everything around them is part of a story. So there's different degrees. Now, to wake a person up, there are two types of stories, Rabbi Nachman says. There's stories of what he refers to as kerev shanim, stories of recent years, and then there's stories that's called stories of atik yomim. Atik is in Kabbalah the most original point of the creation of the world. It's the first moment, the first instance of Hashem creating the world. That first instance is called Atik Yomi. So the stories, so basically he's saying, if you tell someone that his story started 100 years ago, 1,000 years ago, that might wake him up. If he realizes that there's Hashgacha Pratit. For example, Hashgacha Pratit would be a good example of a story of recent times. Because you're basically telling someone, the guy from yesterday, it's a story. Like, all this is connected, right? That's a recent story. So I'm connecting the dots of something that had happened within the last, 5-10 years or 5-10 days. And then if I can go back and I say, well, you read stories of people, multi-generational, right? This person discovered that that's his grandfather. But then, Rabbi Nachman says, sometimes that's not enough. A person can hear a story that goes back and it's still not going to wake him up. You have to go as far back as his soul goes. And that's the only thing that will wake him up. And that's what he refers to the stories of Atik Yomim. That type of story can help a person even in the absolute, is completely fallen off all 70 facets of the Torah. Okay. So far, everything's clear? Everything makes sense?
I was thinking about reincarnation. So when people, an average Jew who's not into mysticism, they hear that Judaism actually is in reincarnation. They're like, what? They're like,
they think it's like
many
Easter
people are
thing.
like, they think it's not Jewish. Many people think that way. So when you first hear reincarnation, it's like, whoa! And you hear maybe just a few, even just introductory concepts about it. Like, oh, there's like a lot more to the picture than I thought. You're like, that's pretty far, like multiple lives and just the most basic concepts. You're like,
no wonder we're tired.
I think there are people.
Lives.
Rabbi Nachman once saw someone and said, "Oh, this person is buried in 500 cemeteries."
Or something,
You hear this?
He's been in every grave. Each Inshallah has been like in every grave site.
It means he's been through 500 different bodies.
What's the difference between Gevurah and Gemara? What's another word, Gevurah?
Right. Well, I don't know about that. I'm not sure in what context that is. Right now, if you want a reference, you can look at number 6. That's what we're focusing on. If you want a reference, so you're in the intro of the lesson.
Talking about Gevurah, I don't know what Gevurah is.
Okay, well, maybe after I can look into it.
Oh,
Okay. So let's look at Purim. Purim Halacha Aleph. Yeah. והנה עיקר התגברות מלכות הרשעה שהיא המן עמלק הוא כשהמלכות דקדושה היא בהסתר. בחינת הסתר אסתיר. כמו שכתוב ולאום מלאום יאמץ. So when we look at the evil kingship and its ability to dominate over the Jewish people, which in the case of Purim is Haman, what is his power? How is he able to overcome? How is he able to dominate the Jewish people, which are a force that you cannot dominate? Hu kshamalchut dikdusha hi behester. This is because the power of the Jewish people is hidden. So when the power of the Jewish people is hidden, it gives access to the evil powers to take over. Okay? Bechinat haster astir. As we know the famous line that Hashem says, I will hide my face. Right? Ve'anochi haster astir panai bayom ahu. Kmo shekatuv ul'om il'om yematz. ועל כן יתגבר המלכות אחשוורוש על ידי פגם וחטא האכילה שגרם להם ליהנות מסעודתו של אותו הרשע.
What's the pasuk mean? Is that Astir? Astir, is that the continuation? Alone?
No, L'om Yematz is referring to, isn't that the bracha of Yitzchak Avinu to Yaakov?
Oh, could be.
So he's telling him the future times that the nations are going to take over the Jewish people.
Oh.
So that's the nation of Achashverosh is going to take over, is going to dominate the Jewish people. So now that the Jewish people are, now that we, Am Yisrael, we are down, okay, so the evil kingdom, the evil control, takes over. How does he take over? Al yedei pigam vechet ha'achila. Through the sin, through eating. Eating is his access point. Shigarem lem lehanot misuda shel oto rasha. Al yedei zeh hitgaber alehem. Right? We all know that the biggest sin of the story of Purim all starts with the Suda of Achashverosh. That's how the story starts, right? So the Suda is how he got him to take over.
The kosher Suda,
Yeah. Right? So now he's making a connection. And the reason he's making this connection is because Rabbi Nachman says in this lesson, what are the ways a person can fall? We learned this on Shabbat. What are the ways a person falls into sleep? One way is just by engaging in Averot. Obviously, that will disconnect the person from any awareness. Another way, though, he says, for Anashim Ksherim, Rabbi Nachman says, people that are good people that follow Torah mitzvot, food has the ability to put us asleep. Food has the power to disconnect us from Hashem. Through the pigam achila, through eating in an improper way, there is hastarat panim. Literally the face of Hashem, which is effectively our own face, is hidden. We're not aware of ourselves, which means we're not aware of us in the world of Hashem. One of the things I love of Rabbi Natan, he's just his mastery of all the psukim of the whole Tanakh. I will hide my face and there will be food. Yeah, I think it's Eov. As Rabbeinu says in another place. A separate lesson where he talks just about how food disconnects a person's face, just on that. Okay, so now he keeps going. Through eating not bikashrut, a person can fall from the 70 facets of the Torah and go into sleep, as we said earlier, as it's brought in this lesson. So if you look at, the Gemara brings the famous calculation of Achashverosh. He calculated when he's going to do the Seudah. And he said he's going to do it at the end of the 70 years, right? Because he's not the first one to do this calculation, right? Belshazzar also did a calculation. Belshazzar. His father-in-law. So did the same calculation where he was going to counted 70 years, and then he went and he put on the clothing of the Kohen Gadol, he put on the clothing, and then he died. And then he realized he miscalculated. So Achashverosh is like, I'm not going to do that. I'm gonna still attack the Jews, but I'm gonna get the calculation right. Okay, so they all knew. The kings of the time knew that the destruction of the first Bet HaMikdash already happened. But they knew that 70 years will pass and that exile will be over. The exile of the first Bet HaMikdash will last only for 70 years. So they said, okay, if 70 years passes and nothing happens, means their God abandoned them, and then we have free reign to take over. So he was advised to do the Seuda at the end of the 70 years. Besof Galut Bavel. Dahenu besof ha-shivim shana shel Galut Bavel. And now he goes a layer deeper. So what's pshat? What does it mean that the Galut is 70 years? And what happens after 70 years? Right? Ki shivim shana shel Galut Bavel hu bechinat shena. The 70 years of Bavel is the aspect of sleep. This is what it means. It's sleep. It's the galut means disconnect from Hashem, right? The Bet HaMikdash is going. It's like ki beti betfila likareh l'cholamim. Like the whole world came to Yerushalayim. It was a sight to be seen. Every Jew felt Hashem. And then as soon as the Bet HaMikdash is destroyed, it's a darkness. So it's a sleep. It's like a macro sleep for all of Am Yisrael. So this is the galut. Bechinat mi ika denayim shivim shana. In the lesson, later in the lesson, the Rabbeinu brings the story of Choni HaMagel. In the story of Choni HaMagel, he sees someone that planted a carob tree, and he was asking, "Az hayinu kecholmim." The pasuk hayinu kecholmim. No, what's the pasuk in Shir HaMalot?
It's the
B'shuv Hashem et Shiva Tzion hayinu kecholmim, right?
Yeah.
Right, so it says from when Hashem brings back the light of Tzion, we were like dreaming, which means we were sleeping, and that's referring to the first galut. So when the pasuk says we were dreaming, it means we were sleeping. Dream means you're sleeping. So Choni HaMagel would say, who sleeps for 70 years? This is the famous Gemara. It says, who sleeps for 70 years? Mi ika denayim shivim shana. And then the Gemara says, and then he met someone who planted a carob tree, and the guy said, why are you planting a carob tree? So it takes 70 years for a carob tree to grow. She says, you're not even going to eat from this carob tree. Why are you even planting it? He says, it's for my grandson. He says, you're planting a carob tree for your grandson. And then the Gemara says, Choni HaMagel sat down, he ate a piece of bread, and he fell asleep. And the Gemara says he slept for 70 years. And then the Gemara says he wakes up and nobody recognized him. And Choni HaMagel was like the head Rosh Yeshiva, and he came into the yeshiva, nobody ignored him, he was nothing.
Shoshana mean in Hebrew?
Shivim Shana?
No, Shoshana.
Shoshana?
Yeah. Something year. Shoshana.
Shesh Shana means 6 years.
Shoshana means just a little girl named Shoshana.
Oh,
means
it's Rose. Rose, Shoshana means rose.
Rose Shoshana. Oh.
Sounds like
Because you said Shana, now it's making me think of Shoshana.
it sounds the same, yeah.
So no, there's no mention of Shoshana in this story. There's no mention of Shoshana. So this is the story of Choni HaMagel. So Choni HaMagel brings this point that we're talking here about sleeping for 70 years. Right? So Choni HaMagel in the Gemara says someone slept for 70 years, and it was very bizarre for him that someone could sleep for 70 years. And then the reference is that the galut of Bavel is considered sleeping for 70 years. So we know that Achashverosh is looking at the Jewish people, and he says these Jewish people, they need to be asleep for 70 years. And at the end of the 70 years, I'm going to make a meal. And at the end of the 70 years, as you know, if you know the story of the lost princess, he slept for 70 years also, which is connected to this lesson. At the end of the 70 years, that's when the sleep is at its strongest, towards the end of the 70 years. Bechinat hastara. What is sleep? Sleep is we disconnected from Hashem. כן, כשראו המן ואחשוורוש עדיין לא נגאלו ישראל ולא נתעוררו משנתם, they saw, okay, it's the end of 70 years, the Jewish people haven't woken up, כן סבר שלא יגאלו ולא יתעוררו עוד. So that's it, they're done. That's it, they're locked into the sleep, this is game over. כי עד ה-70 שנה, until 70 years, יש תקווה להתעורר משנה. It's not such a deep sleep, a person can come out of it. מאחר שעדיין לא נפלו מכל ה-70 פנים, right? Because what is sleep? Sleep means facets of connection to Hashem. So if we're disconnected halfway, 35, there's still another 35 facets that are lighting, that give us connections or access points to Hashem. Okay, maybe you say a person is connected 65. Okay, there's still 5 points left. So there's still a point by which a person can wake back up and connect to Hashem. ועל כן היה ראוי שיהיה הגאולה תקף ומיד בסוף 70 שנה, ולא תאחר אפילו רגע. And therefore, immediately, once you've slept for 70 years, it should be immediately the גאולה. כי כשיתעכב יותר מ-70 שנה ונופלים, חס ושלום מכל ה-70 פנים. But if, after 7 years, a person has fallen to such a tremendous disconnect, by the way, we are way past 70 years. Today, this is where like 500 years. It is very difficult to wake up from sleep after a person has disconnected from all 70 facets of the Torah. Only way a person can wake up is to have the Hadrat Panim. Hadrat Panim is the level of Atik, which is what is referred to as Mashiach. So that means, what are we talking here about? We're talking here about the fact that when a person is asleep, he has no face, right? We can see this literally. Anyone who's sleeping, his face goes away. Yes? That meins the face, Rabbi says in this lesson, the face of a person is his sechel, is his life. The life keeps the person awake. What is the sechel? The sechel is the connection to some aspect of Hashem. When a person is asleep, he has no face. His face is gone. Now, the tzaddik, the ultimate tzaddik, which is the neshama of Mashiach, he's the ultimate awake. He has the highest level of being awake. He's fully connected and feels Hashem. So he has the best face. Right? So that is referred to as Hadrat Panim. Hadrat Panim means his face shines. It shines for us. We know we read Moshe Rabbeinu, right? He had to put something on his face, right? Because the shine was too strong.
So you get an aspect of that on Shabbos, on Hearing.
Yes, Anpin Hearing is the 70 facets. That's Anpin Hearing.
We say that in Kagavna, right? On Shabbos. Yeah.
Right? And the opposite is called Anpin Chashuchin. Anpin Chashuchin means we're moving away from the light. So what is the Anpin Hearing? What is the light of the face? It's the 70 facets of the Torah. So when a person is completely disconnected from all 70 facets, the only thing that's going to wake him up or give him oxygen to make him alive is when he touches Hadrat Panim. When he feels the sense of Hadrat Panim, that's going to wake him up. Bebichinat ve'ad atik yomin mata. Atik yomin ze bechinat Hadrat Panim. So Hadrat Panim is that this tzaddik, Mashiach, he's so alive that he's fully aware of how he's connected all the way to Atik. He's living, his presence right now is all the way to Atik. I mean, he doesn't remember 1 Gilgul, 2 Gilguls. No. He's all the way back to the Atik, to the first point. That is his face. That is the power of...
You couldn't remember your previous Gilguls.
Not the tzaddikim. You read the story of the 7 battlers?
Person, for sure.
You read the story of the 7 beggars?
I don't know if I read the whole,
Which part? There's like
the blind one. The blind one, he tells a story of how far they can remember.
Oh yeah, that's the
right.
Yeah.
So the ultimate he says, I remember nothing.
I remember everything and nothing.
And then right. So, I remember when it was nothing. Remember that's Atik. Atik is the something of nothing.
But the Meister, we know that it's another thing. Among ultimate biggest tzaddikim, they barely physically sleep in the world. Like they.
Yeah.
Physically, like
it was on the Lubavitch Rebbe would only sleep like 40 minutes a night or something
Yeah, there's many
ridiculous
tzaddikim,
like that.
many
Like
tzaddikim.
an hour or two a
two,
night.
2
That's
hours,
it.
3 hours. It was,
I know people that tzaddikim that they don't sleep more than 2 hours a night. They're fully awake.
Toronto?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yes, hidden tzaddikim here. ועל כן כשראו שלא נגאלו בסוף ה-70 שנה, כי טעו בחשבון, then they made the mistake. What happened was Achashverosh miscalculated. So now he thinks it's 70 years. I think the Gemara says it was like 67. He was like 3 years off. And he sees the Jewish people are sleeping. So they said, okay, now we're going to power up the sleep. How we're going to do it? Through a seudah. Right? שעל ידי זה נופלים לבחינות שלו. וכן עשו סעודה בסוף ה-70 שנה, כדי שיהנו ישראל מהם, כי זה ידוע שכל סעודתו של אותו רשע. Right? So that means the seudah, first of all, there's a question here. Don't we know that the seudah was kosher? So how is it possible for the Jewish people to fall? Right? That's the first question. And even if you're going to say, well, you can still farm kosher food, but he says here clearly that they ate not kosher. So what it was is that he designed the seudah, כי זה ידוע שכל סעודתו של אותו רשע היה כדי להכשיל ישראל באכילת איסור. The whole function of making it kosher is to get them to ultimately eat not kosher. But you're not going to make Jews eat not kosher. So you have to give them kosher, and then slowly by slowly you can get them.
There's a lot of non-religious Jews that don't understand kosher.
It took them many generations to get there. I think what they're always saying generally, a person who knows what it is, stuff, like if you look at the things, usually, in very rare cases, they would actually do that. They would transition slowly, and then it's kosher style, and I only eat out of the house, and in the house, and you know what I mean? It's very hard for people to go into one. And today you have people who are, okay, they don't even know.
We're asleep.
They don't even know.
We're at the end of the story. We're already asleep. We need hadrat panim. The only thing that's going to wake us up is if we feel some level of hadrat panim. That's not short of that. It's very hard for people to wake up. And he says clearly that a person can do Torah mitzvot and not be awake. So therefore, his idea was at the end of the 70 years to do a meal and bring them down. Right? And then Haman advised Achashverosh to kill Vashti. Why? Because Haman, who represents the Sitra Achra, he knew. That means what's happening here. We're gonna go from one point to the next point. What's happening right now is the first thing we're understanding is how it works for 70 years. The 70 years means that a person can go into deeper layers of sleep, and as a person goes into deeper layers of sleep, he becomes more and more disconnected, and his ability to wake up goes further and further away. And the only thing that can connect him is the tzaddik. Now, how does the Sitra Achra work? How does he trap us? We have to understand his ways so we are aware when it's happening to us. So let's look at the story and see how the Sitra Achra works. It says, he says, okay, so he tells Achashverosh to kill Vashti because this will set the stage for Esther to show up. And when Esther shows up, then he can take over. Because that's what he wants. What the Sitra Achra wants, why is Achashverosh counting the 70 years? What does he care? 70 years, So the first step is, my first question to you is, if he won the 70 years, okay, if Achashverosh calculated the 70 years and the Jews are lost, why does he need to make a meal to trap them even more? Like, they're done. They're falling asleep. Why? He's saying here at the end of the 70 years, he needs to make a meal to lock them in. But if the 70 years passed, and according to his calculation, and the Jewish people are a done deal, their God didn't come to save them, why does he have to make a meal? He's saying the whole purpose of the meal is to get them to lock into their sleep. Well, the 70 years passed and they're in. What is the function of the meal? From the perspective of the Sitra Achra, from the perspective of evil, if he has you, why does he need to do more to have you? if a person is given up, like a person is fully asleep, he's surrendered, so to speak, to whatever evil forces are there. Yet we still see that there's something happening where the evil needs to have one more layer of dominance. Because according to Achashverosh, the meal took place after the 70 years. That means the Jewish people are asleep. Now that the Jewish people are asleep, we're going to take over. So this is one thing we have to learn, is that the way the Sitra Achra works is that after a person is fully asleep, he wants to take over the Jewish soul. He wants to. That means it's not enough that the Jews are subdued and they don't have a point of redemption. It's not enough for the Sitra Achra. There's one more thing that needs to happen. The next thing that needs to happen is Vatilakach Esther Bet HaMelech. That's what they need. What the Sitra Achra wants is he wants to capture the essence of the Jewish soul. And that's Esther. Esther represents the entire Jewish nation, and they want to capture him into the Malchut. Vatilakach El Bet HaMalchut goes into the palace of evil. Until evil doesn't have the soul inside locked in him, is not satisfied. It's not enough for evil to know that you're fully asleep and that you have no chance of waking up. He's not happy with that. He wants to own you. He wants to dominate you. This is what it says here. Vaken boto asuda ya'atz haman harasha laharog et vashti malka shekol ze haya atzat hasitra achra v'chavanata כדי שעל ידי זה יתגלגל הדבר ותילקח אסתר לבית המלך כדי להביא בחינת מלכות בהסתרה יתרה ביניהם. Okay, so now we'll pause here because I want to answer the other question we had. The other question was, so that's how the Sitra Achra works to take over us. He makes sure that we're fully asleep. He waits the 70 years. He doesn't do anything for 70 years. Waits for our time to run out. He sees that we're fully asleep. Then he wants to dominate us. So now what do we do? What do we do to get out of it? If we go back in the lesson, we learned last week in the part of Yirat Shamayim. So the catalyst to wake up, or to get for a person to wake up, is Yira. Is the character trait of Yira. Has the ability, fear, awe, reverence, has the ability within us to get the avodah working. That means when a person activates Yira, he can do a lot. He can wake up, he can start connecting to Hashem. In explaining how a person can do that, Rabbi Nachman talks about the Yirat Shamayim in a very practical level. We learned a little bit about Yisachar Zvulun, which has 3 dimensions. Okay? That means the Gemara talks about in Baba Metzia that a person has to divide their money, their assets, their money, into 3 ways, right? You have to have cash, you have to have property, and you have to have in the market. Your money has to be cash that you can have, assets, and then in the market that's just moving. So Rabbi Nachman learns from that there's 3 dimensions to fear. That means in those 3 areas, fear, that we learn how to have fear through those 3 dimensions. So we spoke a little bit about fear within the context of business, which is Yisachar and Zvulun, that's what we spoke last time. And in the context of property, what is fear in the context of property? For that, he brings the Gemara in Sanhedrin. The Gemara in Sanhedrin says a very interesting Gemara about Esther. The Gemara says that in a time of, so we all know that when a person's life is under threat, you're allowed to do any avera except for three cardinal sins, right? Kilu arot, shvichut damim, avodah zarah. Those 3 we cannot commit, even under the threat of a person's life. But then the Gemara says, what if it's a situation where everyone is going to be killed no matter what you do? Right? So it's like we've experienced this as a Jewish people where there was just killing Jews. In a situation where they're just killing Jews, the Gemara says, then you should give up for anything. anything Jewish, you let yourself to be killed for. Anything Jewish. And the Gemara says, what's anything? What is the minimum? It says, if the Jewish people tie their shoes in a specific manner, this is considered the Jewish way. And the guy says, don't tie it that way, or I kill you. You should allow yourself to be killed. Wait, but then the Gemara adds another criteria. It says, this is only if it's done b'far hesya. That means if it's done in front of 10 Jews. If it's done in front of 10 Jews, then in private it's okay, but in front of 10 Jews it's a problem. Okay, so just to summarize the Gemara, a person must sacrifice their life for Hashem if they're being asked in front of 10 Jews in a pogrom situation or in a situation where a lot of Jews are being killed. If in front of 10 Jews they're asked to do something un-Jewish, even something extremely trivial, a person must allow their lives to be sacrificed. Okay, so then the Gemara asks, what about Esther? Esther was b'far hesya. She was with Achashverosh, and she was living with a goy. She was being intimate with him, and it was b'far hesya. So even if you say that it's not one of the 3 cardinal sins, even if you can make that argument, but everyone knew. All the Jewish people understood what was happening with Esther. It was considered b'far hesya. And then the Gemara answers something that's crazy. The Gemara answers, Esther karka olam. Gemara says Esther is karka. She is like the land, and the land, when you plow the land is not part of it. The land doesn't care what you do to it. And Rashi explains that Esther, in the act of Achashverosh, she didn't do anything. She was completely passive. Therefore, she's not complicit, and there are no ramifications, and it's not considered that she did an avera. It's not considered that she did anything. Right? So the Gemara asks, but she did something wrong, and she should have allowed herself to be killed instead of doing something wrong. The answer of the Gemara is, she did nothing. So how is this relevant to us?
All right, is that the same place where it says in favor of the Shema? This concept of favor of the Shema, or no? Is that something else? Is that another concept elsewhere?
Isn't that in the Tosfot over there?
I'm not sure. I just heard this concept, and I was like, that's like the.
It's better to
classic
do. It's a Hasidish thing. This idea of it's better to do
I
it.
was like, what's in Gemara?
I don't know. I don't know the source. I just heard it's pretty radical concept. I've heard.
Yeah, there were some
But it
Hasidic
seems like-
rabbis that did crazy things where
No,
it's better to do a Avera Lishma. It's better to do a Avera Lishma than a Mitzvah Shel Lishma, right? It's better
Sure
to.
it comes from that.
Okay,
I'm not
it's
sure it comes
we're
from that.
digressing.
Maybe it's not from the Gemara. Okay.
We're digressing.
It's
No,
a couple block down. Don't try this. Don't go there.
it's not for us.
You know what you're doing.
So what's happening here is Isha Karka Olam. The concept of Karka Olam means that Esther herself, in the act with Achashverosh, the Gemara rules she did absolutely nothing. Halachically, she did absolutely nothing. And you might ask, how is that possible? So this gives us an access point to understand the minimum and the starting point of Itaruta Diltata. What is the minimum a person can do to wake up, right? So we said, if a person is asleep and they have no ability to wake up, you shouldn't wake them up unless they wake up from themselves. So what is the minimum we can do to wake up? So that means when a person finds themselves in a moment of an avera, or in a moment where the sleep, let's just say, to use the language, the sleep is taking over, the minimum a person can do to wake up is to do Isha Karka Olam, to do like Esther, to tap into the point that you don't agree. Right? That's the onus, right? That's the idea of anusa. That means that a person in themselves, if they realize there's no way I can stop, like I'm heading down a path, I can't stop. I'm a lost cause. I'm a lost cause. I can't stop. The sleep has taken over. Even if I want to stop, I'm not going to get anywhere. It's a done deal. Right? So that means the person is basically going into a deeper sleep. What's the point where a person can wake up? So we think that waking up means you stop the act. You don't engage in the act. That would be waking up. And that is waking up. But what if a person is unable to stop in the act? In the case of Esther, she's unable to stop. She's unable to stop. However you want to see it, she's unable to stop. She's trapped. She's representing Am Yisrael. The evil has taken her. The evil has literally physically taken her over. She's unable to stop. She's Achashverosh. What is she supposed to do? How can she still stay awake in the face of evil completely dominating her? And she was Vatilakach el bet hamalchut. That means in the heart of the evil. Malchut Achashverosh, which is Malchut Haman Amalek. This is proper. She's in the heart of the evil. How can she, right? How does she survive? How does she not completely go into sleep? How is Esther engaging in the worst with the worst person, and she still stays Esther? How's that possible? That's the point. That's Karka Olam. Karka Olam means the Yirat Shamayim, the starting point of the Yirat Shamayim of a person, the earliest, is the point of the person that, I mean, we all have this, where there's a point, it could be extremely subtle, that we don't agree. It means we're engaging in an activity that we know we shouldn't be engaging, everyone on their level, but there's a point inside of us that doesn't agree to it, right? There's a point, that means Esther herself didn't agree. And because she didn't agree, the Gemara rules that she didn't do anything. It means it's a powerful point. If you don't agree to what's happening, it's powerful enough to keep you awake. And that's the starting point of all the redemption. The entire redemption of Am Yisrael was dependent on Esther. And Esther, the Gemara rules, did not engage in anything with Achashverosh. That means she was taken by Haman. She was taken in. They got her, right? But they weren't able to completely dominate. They weren't able to completely swallow her up because the point inside of her that she disagreed. So that means even Achashverosh, everything he did, she was not able to overtake her. And that's because Karka Olam. And that means that Karka it's the definition of Karka, and the reason why Karka is always the best investment, is because it's a secure investment. It's solid. It's not going anywhere. It's here, right? Everything else is fluid. It can be stolen. It can be taken away. It's not. But Karka is Karka. You're gonna take the building and escape you're gonna travel overseas with a building. You can't, right? It's Karka. So that's the point. The Karka point of a person, the Karka point in our neshama, is the most foundational point of the soul's pulse. And that is that even if a person and all the things are happening, that pulse is still there. And what the Haman wants you to disregard it and say, nah, forget it, it's done. It's a done deal. Look at you, you're in the kingdom of hell. Just let go. Right? Why do you have to fight back? So you don't have to fight back. Esther didn't fight back.
Remember that same with the beard, right? Chazer dripping down your beard.
Yeah. Remind
you
me.
usually say if you're gonna eat the chazer, you might as well let it drip down your beard. So Renachman says if you're gonna eat chazer, obviously you shouldn't, but at least don't let it drip down your beard.
Obviously you shouldn't.
Right. No, but some people take it like,
right.
But I'm saying if you find yourself, like you say, if you find yourself
exactly,
in that situation where you're doing wrong, this and that,
very good point.
People say, let's just.
Right, and you
Still
would say
maintain your dignity on some
at
level.
least stop it.
Maintain
Once you
your
came to the
dignity.
karka,
yes,
hold. If you're falling down, but just hold on to whatever you can. Don't
minimum viability.
Did Moshe Rabbeinu eat meat?
The most random questions.
Why not? I think he did.
It's a great question.
The Lubavitchers were telling me that meat was wasn't way back then.
I thought it was what's it called? After Adam.
He didn't eat
The
chazer.
rabbi said you're allowed to eat meat.
After the mabul, after the mabul, then we can eat meat, no?
Before Matan Torah, nobody ate meat, right? Before Matan Torah, none of the Jewish people had meat.
You're gonna have to.
So what about during Moses?
After.
After we did.
No, after they
Moshe
couldn't
Rabbeinu aid
check.
me? I don't know.
That's what maybe that's where
Did Moshe Rabbeinu aid me?
You mean for like Shavua?
I don't think before. Date Pesach now.
He lived 120
That's true.
years, so a point in his life we're
Right.
talking about.
So why not after? What's
Because
the...
they needed, they
If
didn't,
that's
they
the
didn't
what
know
they
the
meant.
halachot of
Interesting question.
Shita
Ask them what they
part,
meant.
right?
Oh,
Yeah,
it wasn't...
Moshe had to teach everyone.
So there was a period where...
Yeah.
I see. Okay, so, alright, so we have now an explanation on Itaruta Diltata. What is... Okay, so just to clarify, if we look at a Baal Tshuva, or anyone who's ever had a moment of inspiration, likely that moment of inspiration is not from us, right? It's external. That means you didn't make that inspiration come. It came to you, and it's a force that it's borrowed. It's there, and it's gonna run its time, and it's gonna leave. That's called itaruta dil ela. It wakes you up, it gets you going, and it gets us moving, and we can do all kinds of crazy things while that energy is within us. But then it goes away. So that's dil ela. And we can't control when that shows up. It's whenever Hashem decides. But what can we control? And that's all that matters, right? You can't build a plan on something that's outside of your control. So for avodah, what we could do, we have control of itaruta diltata. But what's the minimum itaruta diltata? I mean, it's like when you're lost and there's nothing you can do, you give up. Just give up. You've tried 1,000 times. Like, why are you trying again? Esther, Isha Karka Olam. Esther Karka Olam. That means there's a minimum point where Rabbi Nachman tells us that this is itaruta diltata. You have this point, and you're not going to be completely asleep. You have this point, and you won't be completely sucked into the sleep which is essentially the Haman. Amalek is and Purim. Amalek is always trying to take over the Jewish people. That's the whole story of Purim, right? Vayavo Amalek vayilachem Yisrael. Timche etzecha Amalek. Amalek, the whole Purim is Haman, which is a descendant of Amalek, trying to erase Am Yisrael. And he says, I'm going to get to the soul of the Jewish person, and I'm going to die it down. And he says, okay, he waits for a person to sleep. It's not enough. It's not enough that we're asleep. He wants to get us completely eliminated. And the way we fight back is to connect with the inner part of ourselves that's completely locked in, not agreeing, and not disregard it. Because sometimes in the face, I think we're conditioned to say, so what that you want to do something? If you can't bring it to fruition, then it has no value. So what that you didn't want, that you didn't agree? You did it anyways, right? And that's sort of the world that we live in, that people look at us from what we end up doing. And maybe on a practical level, that's what matters. But in terms of internally, for us waking up and having a connection with Hashem and being able to see Hashem in the reality, the most valuable thing we can do is to stay connected to that inner point. That means, yes, I'm still engaging in something that I shouldn't be engaging. Physically, it's game over. But if I lock into that inner point of my neshama that says no, into the karka, and I bring Hashem in there, that is it. That's everything. The redemption will come from that point. The redemption will be available. And that is the story of Purim. The story of Purim is that. The whole story of Purim is around Esther. And we read on Purim, we have to read that story. But that's her. That's how she stayed alive. She kept the pilot. She kept the pilot alive. And that's the entire redemption that we're all here today is because of that. Practically and spiritually.
I don't think it's like a bittul also almost.
A bittul?
Yeah. You got like a lot. I think Rabbi Nachman says a lot of times. He said it was the things that bad when going to bittul. So remember that, right? And Rabbi Nachman says, how do you do that? He says, close your eyes and close your mouth.
Oh, there's a separate Torah of that, right? You have to close your eyes and see.
Oh, that's the 60 Savachei, but when I was saying, I think it's like in the 6 or 1, there's this. Well, this is when things are really bad, you just close your eyes, close your mouth, and now you're bittul. But I was thinking almost like it's a little bit.
No, this is more like what you said of the Chazer.
Okay, that's a better one. Don't, that was good.
Chazar
What
was
it?
nailed it, and there's many stories like that where it's like the Chazar story is perfect. Really captures it. A lot of the sichos you have of Rabbeinu saying stuff are so bizarre of how it makes sense, right? Because we don't understand why Rabbi Nachman was saying like that. It makes more sense the other version, where what was it?
If you know what Rabbi Nachman is, it makes perfect sense. He's the one always
Exactly.
to hang on.
To hang on. That's the Tarot Del Tata. Because like a lot of us, we chase the Tarot Del Ela. Right? We're looking for that external high. And that's the most accessible high because it's something that we can touch and feel. Like you're about tshuva, if you ever were inspired, you have that moment of inspiration, all you want is to get back to that place. Right? All we want. Like if you've ever felt a light of Hashem burning inside of you, that you do anything, and then the light's gone, all your desire is to get back to that light. That's all that matters. And you look for it in this way, and you look for it in that way. And that's Itarot Dil Ela. But what can I do with it? I have no, like...
But you're looking to the Santa, you know?
Right, no.
You're
looking for that.
Yeah?
No, so you're saying the Latata is... No, the Latata doesn't feel that way. The Latata is... Okay, 10 years you're looking for it and you don't find it, then you give up, right? At some point you're going to give up. Like, you get the amazing high, it brought you into the fold, you're
drag
good.
yourself back to Iran.
Yeah, you go to... Right, people go to Uman for the high. What if you go to Uman and it was a terrible experience?
That's always how it is. There's a certain point in Uman where you're like, okay, I'm not going back. There's just too many people. It's too crazy. I can't sit. This, that. These others smoking. Rabbeinu said against tobacco. They're smoking this, that. Okay, that's it. I'm
smoking
right?
out the right.
That's it.
No, but what if... No, not that part.
And
Not
then
the
after a
physical.
few months, you're like, no, I gotta go back.
What if you're not inspired?
That's the...
If you're not inspired. I know many people tell me, this year I didn't cry. Nothing. I stood there stoned. Nothing. Like, what's the point? If you're going to go there, I want to feel something. I want to be alive, right? And people come back with such amazing stories. Uman was amazing. What if Uman was not amazing? What if it was nothing?
Right.
It can happen.
Now you're
So
like
then
an
what?
old Breslov. Now you're
No, I'm saying version 1 is looking for Itarot Dil Ela. Itarot Dil Ela, looking for some high, some external, something that's outside of me that exists. And some people access it. The problem is it's not a proper plan. It's not a good plan for Avodat Hashem. Because you can't... The one thing you could plan, Itarot Dil Ela, the Itarot Dil Tata, you can plan for it. I will, no matter what, this is where I stand. I will do this. That's within my control. That's step. I can do that, right? I can't control Yitarot Dil. And that's, when you have control from Yitarot Dil Tata, then you get Yitarot Dil Ela. That's the point. So yeah, any questions? Any clarifications? We're good?
I always wondered, I don't know if it's one question of Gemara, but that financial plan, like the mice that people, I wonder how it works today, and I know people are so mocked to do it. It's interesting.
Ask your local financial planner.
Interesting.
Local orthodox. I buy local financial.
Buy, I don't know. What's the cheapest property you can buy? I don't know about Toronto, but buy a broom closet. You have karka. What piece of property can I buy for $1,000? Yalla, and then we're
Someone told me he bought a piece in Manitoba, like an acre. It's like
Just
no
Phyllis?
What?
Just
no, he told me.
This isn't advice. This is not halakha.
And there's like I don't know.